All right, let's turn now to the outdoors. This summer has been particularly bad for ticks and tick bites. Some are calling it a record year for the biting bugs. So here to shed some light on what's happening is Dr. Catherine Dalton, an assistant professor at the University of Iowa's College of Public Health. Catherine, thank you so much for being here with us. Is it true? Are we seeing more ticks this year?
Hi, Shelby. Thanks for having me here. And yes, you are right. We are seeing higher number of ticks compared to any other most recent year.
Well, can you put this into context for us? I mean, in our area, eastern Iowa, western Illinois, just how much worse are tick numbers this summer?
Yeah, so the CDC does a really great job with tracking reported tick bites when you go to the doctor. And we've seen throughout the country that there have been increased number of reported tick bites this year. But specifically for the Midwest, we've seen it almost double compared to previous years. From 2017 to last year, it's been shown to have around 30 to 50 tick bite reports per about every 100,000 emergency department visits. This year, we've already seen up to 85,000, which is over double what we've seen in previous numbers. So while all areas in the country are affected, specifically the Midwest, we've seen a really big jump this year.
Okay, and people might say, why is this an issue we should care about? I mean, what happens when we have an increase like this in tick bites?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing we are concerned about when we have an increase in our tick population, we as individuals are going to be more exposed to those tick bites. And a big concern is that these ticks can spread various tick borne diseases. And that includes Lyme disease, which we see very frequently. In fact, about a third of juvenile ticks and over half of adult ticks carry at least one tick borne that can infect and make us ill.
Hmm. So, what are some reasons why the tick population might be larger this year? I mean, obviously, we might not have an exact answer, but what are you seeing?
Yeah, that's a very complicated question, unfortunately. One thing we know is that, our climate is changing and we are seeing warmer winters. This means the ticks aren't hibernating for as long, and so they have more of an opportunity to bite us and infect us, in that they are coming out of hibernation earlier in the spring and lasting longer into the fall. Ticks can be out and about in up to 40-degree weather. And so we're seeing them in earlier times than what we've had before. So that's a part of it, but that's not the only contributing factor. Changing in climate impacts a lot of our ecosystem, and that can all impact the tick's life cycle and its overall ecology. And so it's been really challenging for ecologists and entomologists to really isolate what environmental factors are causing this increase. A lot of it is, again, due to climate change because every year we're seeing changes. And so it's been a moving target to really isolate what specific factors are causing this increase. But we do know it is driven by our changing climate.
Hmm. And we also know, like you said, that the numbers are rising. So, knowing all of this, how can we all keep ourselves as safe as possible for the rest of this year?
Yes, that's a great question. You hear a lot about doing tick checks, particularly when you're doing any outdoor activities. And that's not just, big hiking events, but even just gardening in your backyard or taking your dog for a walk. Tick checks are definitely important, but I don't think that's sufficient in itself. One, because we know that it's these juvenile nymph ticks are the more commonly implicated in the spread of disease. And they're really hard to find. They're about the size of a poppy seed. So you can imagine that could be challenging to find if it's, on the back of your knee or in your armpit area. And so what I recommend is after any outdoor activity is to remove your clothing and launder it at high temperatures, and then to also take a shower. Another fun thing you can do is actually use a lint roller, which will pick up any unattacked ticks. And then another component is if you can avoid their environment overall. Ticks like to hang out in tall grasses, and so avoiding those areas in your yard where you come into contact with, forest and or tall grasses will help prevent your exposure to these ticks. And then lastly, if there's any pet owners out there, make sure your dogs are on flea and tick prevention because they can carry these ticks into your house, which could then expose you and your family. And my last piece of advice is that if you do see a tick bite, make sure report it to your doctor because they might possibly recommend you going on medication to help prevent you from getting ill from these infections.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask, what do you do if you do get bit? Catherine, thank you so much for your time today. I think this is fascinating and it's a really great tips to keep people safe. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me here.
If you guys at home want to share this story, you can find our online version at WQAD.com. Just click on the As Seen on TV tab at the top of the homepage.